Welcome back to Talking Points. Thank you to everyone who's watching us on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We've got a load more new available platforms you can now hear us from. If you want us to put us onto any other platforms, let us know down in the comments. But yeah, we are fully accessible now. But today we are kind of doing a sort of a mid-season award/review. So we've got sort of 5 areas we're going to look over, which is the most underrated driver, most improved driver, biggest L, best race, and the worst race. And I think we can just go straight into it, guys. So let's first talk about the most underrated driver of this season. Tommo, I'll throw over to you. What's your sort of first thoughts when you hear that most underrated? Who comes to mind?
Because this is why no one ever agrees on underrated, right? Because what you think, it's what you think most people think, and then it's how the discrepancy between what you think and what you think most people think. But what you think most people think is probably not right. But for me, a driver I think who's not had an exceptional season, but I think has done very well, has maybe been overshadowed a bit by his teammate, but not so much in terms of points. I think you know who's coming. I'm saying Esteban Ocon.
Ooh.
I think Esteban Ocon he's caught a lot of slack this year, especially obviously with all this Piastri stuff. A lot of people are like, oh, they should have got Ocon out. They've made a mistake tying him down. It should be Piastri, Alonso, whatever. Look, I think when you look at Esteban's, the caliber of his teammates throughout his career as well, Perez, Ricciardo, now Alonso, it's not been easy for him. And, do I think he's a world beater? Do I think he's gonna set F1 alight? I don't think he's at that level yet, but I do think that he's been consistent. He hasn't had the bad luck that Alonso's had. He's delivered points for the team. He's like Alpine are ahead of McLaren, in part because Fernando's been so unlucky, but in part because Esteban's been there to pick up the pieces.
Done the job.
And, I think last year he did really well last year. I think where he was so close to Alonso, that's also kind of bit him a bit, because I do think Alonso's been the stronger driver this year. But it's Fernando Alonso. I mean, people saying like, oh, Esteban's not good. Like, when he's against Fernando Alonso, most people are going to get shown up by Fernando. I mean, you know that, Aldas, more than anyone.
I've seen it many times, trust me. I actually quite like that pick because I totally agree. I've never seen someone have such a good season and yet no one is talking about him. Like, everyone is talking about, first of all, especially since the whole Piastri situation has come about, Esteban Ocon is just like, he's just chilling on a boat with no one talking about him at the moment, so he's having a great time. But yeah, he's had a fantastic season. I always say that it's nothing spectacular. Like, the funny thing is, we don't even see Esteban Ocon like that much. I don't remember like an amazing move that he pulled off or anything like that, except for his little, fight with Fernando in Saudi. But he's just been there, maximizing the package, maximizing the points. Whenever his teammate or the team drop any points or any other team around them, he's always there. So I really like that shout because, again, it seems all the talk, even pre, the whole Piastri thing, has been about Alonso and his bad luck and what's going to happen to him. And ultimately, that's got nothing to do with Esteban Ocon. He's there to pick up the pieces. He had a bit of bad luck in Silverstone as well, so maybe could have been even more points. But yeah, I like that shout.
Most teammates get thoroughly exposed by Fernando. You look through the course of Fernando's career, like you got a Hamilton who can match him and slightly edge him out, but most of the time he's considerably on top. So I think Esteban is a good shout. Well, do you think that's a good shout, man?
No.
I wouldn't have put him for this one. I've put him for a different category coming up.
Biggest L.
Someone's going to take it. No, so I was actually going to put down Bottas for this one, purely just because it's going off the basis of him, leaving Mercedes and everyone kind of thinking, okay, that's him kind of sort of pretty much sort of done. But since he's gone to Alpha, like, he's scored really well. He scored 7 out of the last 11 or 10 races, I think. 11 or 10 or 12.
Well, he had a really good start to the year.
Yeah.
Wasn't it 6 and 7 at the start, and then it's been a bit dry? But that Alfa Romeo hasn't.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the car. Like, I think any time he hasn't really scored points, it's just down to the car not being there. It's what we said all season with Alpha. Yeah, it's a reliability of the car. Yeah, and like, if that car, I would say, like, didn't have all these issues of, breaking down constantly, I think they'll be up there potentially with McLaren and Alpine in that midfield battle, because that's the only thing that's kind of losing them out, because they had a great start to the year, but then all these reliability issues coming in, but every time they do score points, it's decent. It's not just a 1 point here, a second point there. It's a decent haul. And both Zhou and Bottas are doing a great job. But going back to what I was originally saying of the most underrated, I think it's because Bottas had a bit of a knife in his back starting out this year, because he got demoted from Mercedes. Everyone's kind of thinking, oh, okay, is he now going to start to leave the sport soon? And he's just going to be there to help Zhou out. When in actual fact, it's reminded all of us how well he originally performed at Williams, and then got the call up, and now he's still shown that he's a great driver. So that would be my pick to sort of throw in. But Aldas, you agreed with Tommo of having Ocon in. Was there any others you had on your list?
In terms of my pick, it's going to be, I don't know, maybe a controversial one, maybe not. I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton, actually, because this was a big season, a much different season than what we're used to from Mercedes. How is he going to react? Because the car has not been there in terms of challenging for consistent wins. At the beginning of the season, they were kind of able to pinch the podium, when everything fell apart for the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull. And I was very, very interested to see how a driver of his caliber, with everything that he's achieved, with all the cars that he's been given over the last kind of 8, 9, 10 years, how is he going to react to a rough season? And although there's definitely been points and races where, Lewis has not been comfortable with the car, and they've actually been pretty poor as well. I remember Imola was just a really strange kind of weekend from start to finish. I think the fact that it was a sprint weekend also kind of didn't help him as well. But yeah, that was not a great race by him. But now, especially over the last 5 or 6 races, I think he's been on the podium over the last 5 races or something. So he's really been able to turn it up as the car has also improved. And I've actually been really impressed by him, because it's not just about, in terms of his legacy, it's not just about what you can do in a great car. I really wanted to see what he'd be able to do in a struggling car. And it's got to the point where I feel like he's had such a good kind of middle portion of the season where I still think it's him and Max in terms of the two best drivers in Formula One, in terms of leadership, in terms of pace, in terms of kind of being able to manage a race from start to finish. We saw with George Russell in Hungary, great example. He had the pace to be on pole. Lewis got a little bit unlucky in terms of qualifying with the DRS, but George didn't manage his tyres very well, and Lewis used the experience to get up to second. And that's the key difference between someone like a George Russell and a Lewis Hamilton, and that's what I've been really impressed by. And again, I come back to the fact that, yeah, I feel to me, still the two best drivers undoubtedly are Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. And if Lewis was in that Ferrari, I think that he would do a better job than what Leclerc is doing, because he's got that experience of being able to lead a team and perhaps even lead the strategy a little bit more as well. We know that Lewis is more than capable of dictating his strategy, and I've just been kind of impressed. I know that he's still behind Russell, but yeah, I've been really happy to see him kind of prove some people wrong.
No, I think Hamilton's a really good shout, because I've been thinking about this, and the whole kind of Lewis with the more experimental setups at the start of the season makes sense. They're trying to understand the car, and I think he was kind of compromised, and it's up to you as and us as people looking from the outside in to decide how much of an effect that likely had on Lewis's performance. It's impossible to say for sure, but I do think, if you're the driver who's taking all these, you're the one who's kind of being the testing mule for all these different setups for the car. I think that has a huge impact on your weekend. I mean, Sergio Perez was complaining after he missed out one FP1 session, how that compromised his whole weekend. Lewis has got these whole mad setups on his car, whether it's like Imola, like you said, or Baku when they just dropped it to the floor and destroyed his spine. Actually, when I was thinking about most underrated, Lewis was definitely up there for me, because, I just think that compromises your performance so much, just not being in a car that you're not even close to being able to feel comfortable and settled and at one with a car that they're just fried shit at a wall and seeing what sticks. And since they have seemed to, settle into a understanding of that car, his performances, his podiums, his podium consistency has been mad, and he has been on top of George quite, I'd say, fairly comfortably these last few races as well. So I think Lewis is a good shout.
It just feels weird to kind of say Lewis Hamilton is underrated. I think that just that sentence is what's throwing me off. Obviously, I do completely agree with the points. It's just having that like the previous season of him dominating so well.
Many people use the start of this year to like clown on
Yeah.
Lewis and be like, oh yeah, this shows it was all the car. Where actually, like if you look a bit deeper, you're like, oh, actually, there's a lot more nuance to it. And now he's proving just how good it is. So it depends on like what voices.
And
yeah,
you
no,
never know
totally. And I think
how-
it's just that.
I was going to say, you never know how a top driver is going to react to getting a bad car, because it's one thing winning for year after year, but what's your motivation like and what's your level of performance like when the car dips? And I think we've seen that with Lewis. The fire is still there. And even recently he's talked about he's not thinking of dipping anytime soon. He wants to stay. So that's what's impressed me most. The fact that, and again, it's still him and Max Verstappen, in my opinion, as the two best drivers on the grid.
And a young hotshot teammate as well, which isn't always the easiest thing to manage.
Well, let us know as well, whilst we're going along, who you also think is like, the most underrated as we go along. And I think that'll lead us perfectly well into the next one, which is most improved. So for this one, my actual pick for this was going to be Esteban Ocon. I think looking at his performance from last season to now, I think he's doing great. And yes, obviously, like he is currently outscoring Fernando Alonso, but obviously that's due to Fernando Alonso having a few issues during the season. However, compared to how Ocon was performing last season, where he was pretty much getting slapped up by Alonso, this season he's actually doing pretty well.
Was he being pretty slapped up?
Was he Alonso last year?
It's
your
your
closest teammate, weren't?
Yeah, no, but
they come on,
no, but I mean,
Call
like
him
Alonso
out.
came in fighting, and he just sort of like just started swinging straight away. Which we did. I think it's more because we didn't like, for example, I didn't expect Alonso to do that well last season, and then proved all of us wrong. But then Ocon did finish behind him. But with this season, I think it's more the case of like, although Fernando's had some issues and stuff, Ocon, although he's been in the background, I think he has made more confidence in the car, because obviously he had a time when he was with Ricardo, got outscored by him, then had Alonso come in, outscore him, and really knocks you back on confidence. And this season, he's not, to my knowledge, has done any real mistakes.
Never outscored a teammate.
Exactly that, and he's scored points in like 10 races. There's only like a couple which he hasn't done, and again, it's been decent points, not just like the 1 or 2 points here or there. And because of his performance, they are now beating McLaren in the championship. But Aldas, who's your pick for the most improved this season?
My pick, I think, is actually going to be quite interesting, because it was a driver who wasn't even on the grid last season. So when I say most improved, I'm talking about in terms of the kind of the overall picture of their career, and that's Alex Albon. I feel like there was a lot of pressure. So there we go, your boy. I mean, I had to give him a shout out. I was surprised you didn't give him one for like the best driver or something. But there was a lot of pressure coming into this season. We were all saying that he's not just there to make up the numbers and be a decent driver. He had to lead Williams. He had to be the team leader, the focal point of the team. And that comes with a lot of pressure, and that comes with a lot of expectation as well. And to me, he's totally reached that level. Not only that, but he's warranted the contract extension that he's been given. He is undoubtedly the number one of the team. And he's just the guy that's kind of re-energized Williams. I mean, when you look performance-wise, he had those kind of early point scores, which are really great. I think it was in Miami and obviously Australia as well, on that kind of like no-stop strategy until the final lap. But they're not that much better to where they were in terms of performance from where they were last year. And yet with Alex Albon there kind of replacing George Russell and kind of picking up where he left off, I feel like the team is still energized and still kind of on an upward trajectory, even though they're kind of still a little bit stagnant. But when you look at where he was at Red Bull, I never kind of was 100% sure that he was going to be able to be a team leader where he was at, Toro Rosso in his rookie season, and also then, that 2020 season at Red Bull. But to me, that's why he's improved. He's grown as a driver, even if the results might not be as good as when he was at Red Bull, obviously, because he's at the back of the grid. But yeah, he's really kind of, I think, stamped himself out as someone I think who could have a very long career in Formula One. So yeah, to me, he's improved a lot and more off track than anything else in terms of leading Williams.
That's a great pick. Yeah. Tommo, who are you going for?
I like that agreement, by the way,
Alex
just to say.
is for sure, it's a good shout.
Oh, but it's not your pick, though.
Actually, I had a couple. Alex was one of them, but I think I'm gonna state the case, and it's funny actually because we're kind of like of two of our favourite drivers. I'm actually going to say George Russell, because in the Williams, a lot of unknowns. It's a car at the back of the grid at the end of the day. He put in some stellar performances last year, no doubt, especially in qualified. And you look at Spa, you look at Russia last year, amazing. But at the end of the day, alongside a teammate like Nicholas Latifi, it's always, you're going to be expected to beat, and that's what George did, and that's what Alex is doing now. But I just think to step into that Mercedes alongside Lewis Hamilton and like look at home almost immediately, I would say in terms of race like feistiness, not necessarily outright pace, because I think George has still got a little way to go in terms of his kind of outright pace, I would say, which is fair enough because it's his first year at the team. And again, the context of being your first season at that team. But I think he's shown, like, we had the little scrap with Verstappen at Spain, like, he's shown that he can get his elbows out and fight fair at the front and look like he's completely at home. George was great last year, don't get me wrong, but I think he's been fantastic this year. Yeah, there's been a cut. I mean, again, I put him more at fault for the whole pincer at Silverstone, but that's just kind of an unlucky one. These things like happen when there's two cars alongside you. It's hard to measure. And, you know, at Austria as well, you know, I think he was at fault for the Perez incident. But all in all, I think the way George has stepped into that team and looked at home so quickly, this is exactly what Mercedes would have wanted. And there was no guarantee. You look at his Williams performances fighting at the back. At the end of the day, there isn't that level of pressure, that level of expectation. There was always going to be a question mark until you've raced at a top team. Are you going to be able to handle that? Are you going to be able to deal with it? And George has dealt with it seamlessly. So I've been so impressed with George. He was good last year, but I think he's been fantastic.
Yeah, and I think what you touched on there is really important of like what even Aldas was mentioning, where could you see someone like Albon, not to shit on him, but like could you see him be the leader of like the Red Bull team, which in my eyes I couldn't. Whereas with George Russell, I could see in a few years' time him easily being when Lewis retires, easily being the leader of the team there, because he just seems so comfortable there. We even saw that, you know, when it was in the Sakir race where he jumped in for that one race when Lewis had COVID. Even then, he just saw him like take to it like a duck on water. Like he was so comfortable with the car, and just already injected himself into that team of like it would be a natural fit. So this season it's kind of like, I think it's been like the expectation that we all knew he was going to do well, but I think because he's done really well and compared like sort of on the same sort of performance as Lewis, I think that's a great shout. These are good ones I think we're doing so far. And again, let us know in the comments who your most improved driver is. And
Matt, you sound surprised. Now, I mean, we have wheel knowledge, mate. No doubt about that. You sound surprised.
No. It's a good old chat. I haven't spoken to you guys in a while, so it's a good old chat.
Exactly.
But now we go on to some of the more juicier ones. So we're going to go on to the biggest L. I'm going to throw it to Tommo first on this one.
Well, okay. So in terms of, are we saying a driver that's most disappointed, or
mate, it can be
anything. The biggest
anything.
L moment?
Yeah,
because there's a few. Well, I think for this one we should just kind of openly talk about a few different instances and then pick ours at the end, because I think there's numerous. Like if we're talking about L moments, I mean, the Stroll Latifi incident at
Australia qualifying.
It was Australia, wasn't it? I mean, guys, come on! Like that to me was just like,
I thought it was
so
brilliant.
bad. You got Sonoda putting it into the wall in Canada as well. Well, it depends what you're watching racing for, Aldas, I suppose. So there's a few. I do think that, you know, I think the Latifi Stroll thing's a bit miscommunication. I think L moment, it has to be Yuki putting it into the wall in Canada, especially as he's probably getting points from that race as far as I remember. I think he was looking for a top 10 potential finish there, and to just bin it into the wall. As much as Yuki's performances, I think, have improved quite significantly relative to Gasly from last year. And again, he's rough diamond. I love Yuki, but that was a big juicy L. And I was there. And I was like, oh, Yuki, what have you done? It's like I could hear the crowd go, or like that side of the track before I saw it on the screen. And I was like, oh, Yuki, you muppet, what have you done? So yeah, in terms of L moment, I'm gonna say Yuki into the wall. But what do you guys think?
I'm gonna pick a team, not a driver. Unsurprisingly, I think it's got to be Ferrari.
Go on then.
My biggest L is just Ferrari in general, because do you know what's most frustrating is that their car is actually good. Like the car side and the engineers on that side of the team have done a fantastic job. The raw pace of that car is great. They don't seem to have the same kind of tyre warm-up issues as, you know, Mercedes, but maybe that kind of hampers them a little bit in the race in terms of kind of like taking the tyres a long way. So that car is good. And even on the reliability front, I know that their issues have been a tiny bit worse than Red Bull because they've kind of incurred penalties because of them, but everyone has had issues. Alpine have had issues. Both Red Bull, of course, had early retirements from both of their drivers as well. So, yes, the reliability, you can kind of throw it into, you can throw it in there, but to me, it doesn't matter too much. But the fact that the management and the strategy side haven't been able to back up their drivers, and they're still quite unsure even now of like if they're doing a good enough job or not. Matteo Binotto is putting out a lot of fires saying that they're not doing anything wrong, they don't need to change anything. And it's been frustrating because I feel like there should be a championship battle. We should be going into the summer break, maybe 10 or 15 points maximum between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. And yet, what is it, like 83? Like, I even forget now, but yeah, it's been...
Yeah,
it's been disappointing to see Ferrari kind of waste a good car. They do have the drivers. Yes, they've also made their mistakes as well. Sainz had the early spins, and obviously Leclerc binned it in France. But that happens when you fight for your first world championship. That pressure hits you a little bit different. But yeah, it's been frustrating. The bigger thing and the bigger L for me is that there's still kind of some of the quotes in the media. The fact that Matteo Binotto thinks that they don't need to change. It's a little bit frustrating, and it doesn't give me hope for the second half of the season because this championship fight is done now anyway. Leclerc's not going to win it, but that doesn't mean that you can't sand out the rough edges in 2022 for another push in 2023 where you are the finished article and as good as a Red Bull or a Mercedes. So yeah, to me, the biggest L has to be Ferrari. They have the driver. They're giving Leclerc the support in terms of the team around him, but it's just the strategy side that I think has been letting them down, and also some of the decisions as well.
I think Ferrari, that has been a biggest talking point. It's just a strategy team. Like, something has clearly not worked there, and this is one of the reasons why I don't really rate Binotto that highly, because when it's so clear to us that the strategy in some of these races has been wrong, like where we're actually just watching the race and be like, why are they doing that? The fact that Binotto afterwards doesn't claim anything's went wrong and it's just sort of more situation, that's where mate, there's got to be times where you just, you got to suck in your gut and just be like, you know what, I've got to take this one. We fucked up. And I think the fact that he's just kind of ignoring it, it's I think that's a good. I think I had Ferrari as my biggest L as well, because of all the reasons you listed. But I've also put down a driver, putting him on from Fraud Watch. It's Mick Schumacher for me. We cannot go into recency bias here, because he's only scored he's been in the points twice, and that was only sort of fairly recently due to some other circumstances. But it was either between him and Latifi for me, and I thought Latifi might have been a bit of too much of a too easy pick. Yeah. But I think this is what I've said. I'm no stranger to this. This, if you've been watching the podcast for a while, you know my thoughts towards Mick Schumacher. He's a lovely lad, but at the same time, you've had Kevin Magnussen. I don't hate him. No, I don't hate anyone. But it's just more the fact of you can get better talent in, and I do personally think the reason he's done so well here so far is due to his last name. But Kevin Magnussen, is
name merchant.
Well, no, okay, if he had a completely different name, then we'd be sort of slapping up at the same amount with Latifi. It's he does have that. Okay, oh, come on!
No, come on! He's not on that level. Behave. Look at the gap between him and K-Mag in qualifying. It's like 3
Yeah, but K-Mag, but K-Mag's come into the sport having been away for it and gone to a brand not a brand new car. Sorry, whereas Schumacher has already been there.
Yeah, but everyone's got a new car, and he was already at Haas, so it wasn't the same. K-Mag coming back, it's a team that he knows. They know him as well. So I think K-Mag's I was thinking about him for underrated as well, because I think K-Mag's better than I think he gets credit for. And I think Mick's pace-wise, he does make mistakes. And he did stupid mistake in Monaco, mistake in Saudi Arabia. I agree with that. But I think pace-wise, he's pretty close. I think in the same way as Yuki. I think Yuki pace-wise just makes mistakes.
it's a thing for me where you do draw the comparison of K-Mag, he wasn't driving anything else whilst he had that year out. So him coming back in and then straight away, but it's different machinery. It's still it's different machinery. But for example, I think also at the beginning of the season, him getting a P6 straight away, that was it not only showed the developments Haas had been doing, but also the fact that K-Mag was able to do that from the first race, whereas Mick wasn't near that. And it's kind of most of the times you don't need to even look at the standings. You know that K-Mag is going to be ahead of Mick, unless there's been like a DNF or anything. But that's who I would put down as like the L driver of the year. It was between him or Latifi.
I thought, by the way,
but like I
thought France was a really funny weekend where in qualifying it was K-Mag who had the engine penalty and went to Q3, and it was Mick who had the clean run and then crossed over the line and had his lap deleted and went out in Q1. So. Yeah, do you know what? Let's forget about the K-Mag side of it, and he got a P5 in Bahrain. You know, that was a great result for him. So, forgetting the K-Mag side of it, I mean, I totally agree with with Matt. I mean, again, I said in Monaco, I thought this guy's out. There's like nowhere that he can like save his career, and he is still not exactly scoring points twice in Silverstone and then Austria. That doesn't save your career in Formula One. Like, he is still very much on forward watch, no doubt about it. He is getting better. Like in the races, he is a little bit closer to K-Mag. And I feel like there's just a bit of an experience of actually fighting, because I think Tommo mentioned it loads of times. Like last year was good in terms of getting used to the pressure of Formula One, the environment and what it's like to race. But, when you're at the back of the grid, you're not fighting for points, when you're not even seen most of the weekend, except when you're crashing with your teammate, it's not the same as then, being put into the actual, the midfield where everyone is just scrapping for every last point. So we're seeing Mick kind of get exposed a little bit, but this is more like his rookie season now. So there is still kind of... Don't get me wrong, his seat is nowhere near safe, by the way. If I'm going to Steiner, like, I'm still waiting until the end of the season, no doubt about it. But he does still have kind of half a season to show, okay, you had your kind of, little kind of bad moments at the beginning of the season. Now you want consistency. You're going to get the new upgrade. So especially at the beginning of the second half of the season, we want to see you back in the points and get some good results. So, yeah, I quite like that shout from Matt. No doubt about it. Yeah,
because I just think that, my perception around Schumacher and Tsunoda is quite similar, because both binned it a lot last year, and both have been liable to silly mistakes this year as well, which have cost their respective teams a lot of points. But I think that Mick has shown that when he does get it all together, he can be on pace, if not slightly quicker than K-Mag. And it's not happening often enough, but I'd say the same about Tsunoda with Gasly. I think when Tsunoda gets it all together, whereas like, there's other Latifi. We're not seeing Latifi, unless the weather conditions are, which obviously that throws up a lot more variables. I think just on a normal dry run-in, we're not seeing him. We weren't seeing him close to Russell or close to Albon. So I just think that I agree. Like, I don't fundamentally disagree with what you guys are saying, because I think he has made a lot of cock-ups this year. But I think there is still the potential for a very good driver.
Do you think it's a little too late though?
No.
And I said this as well. I think he's got the rest of this year to prove it. And to be honest, I said this as well. Like when I did my season ratings, you can't just look at these last few races. You've got to, if you just go up to, I think, the 8th race of the year, if you just look at the first 8 races, he's like, down, like right down bad. Like he had a really bad start. So he had some bad luck as well, but like right down at the bottom end. I think he's recovered a little bit, and he's shown enough, I think, for them to give him the rest of the year, like you said, Aldas, and just see if he can kick on and whether he can, discover that. Was it? When, that face.
And people were comparing, I think, to like the Michael Schumacher when he was about to like punch David Coulthard in like Spa or something like.
Yeah.
The evil Mick era. I like to see
overlay
it,
the
but
images.
I think for sure, one thing actually, he does have the second half of the season, and he did cost the team a lot of money. Like that was the really big thing. Like Tsunoda, he was having scraps. He was breaking his front wings. Mick Schumacher was like snapping chassis in half. Left, right, and center. Like it was unbelievable. But yeah, he still has the rest of the season. I still think he could be a very good driver. He has that kind of second season thing about him. It was the same in like F3 and F2. So yeah, now he has the second half of the season. And I think, if he kind of puts it all together, I was very happy to see that when Gunther Steiner did actually like properly put the pressure on him, I think it was around like Baku time, he did actually rebound and kind of get it all together. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the second half of the season for sure. And to me, he's not a certainty to be on the grid next year. But one last question to both of you. If you had to pick one driver on your team, who would you have? Tsunoda or Schumacher right now, to both of you?
Tsunoda.
Ooh.
Yeah. Just because,
I'd pick Tsunoda.
Tsunoda, he's done some silly mistakes, but he has also improved from like last season as well. Because I think last season he came in a bit hot-headed, still thinking it's a bit F2 that everyone's all on a level playing field, so he was fighting a bit too much with cars.
Because they stuck him in Milton Keynes, mate.
Exactly that, yeah. All them roundabouts, just racing around. But yeah, I think just because like I think I've seen him progress this season a lot better, and like him and Gasly's performance are sort of more equally matched as opposed to last season. Whereas with K-Mag and Mick, I can't see that the sort of progress between the two of them. I can only see it from one driver. So Yuki would be mine, but Tommo, who would you go for?
I would also pick Yuki. I think Yuki, like, he's had 2 seasons alongside Pierre Gasly as well. So I think Pierre's been driving at a very high level, particularly last year. It was always going to be a tough ask of Yuki to match Pierre's performances. But I think, and he's gone through a bit of. He's gone through it a bit. He's had some difficult moments. He's struggled. He said it himself, like obviously moving to Faenza as well. And I think seeing that kind of character progression and him having these struggles, I feel like he's kind of rebounded to an extent. And he's still making these mistakes. But I think ultimately, when in the AlphaTauri, I think Red Bull kind of, you're more able to make these mistakes because they are supported by Red Bull. It's not as like kind of by the by in terms of budget that it is at Haas, where if you shunt, there's a lot more to lose. I think Helmut Marko would rather see Yuki pushing, and yes, he has made these mistakes, but I think he's shown these glimmers of like real talent. That, I mean, again, in F2 in his rookie season, if you take away reverse grid sprint races, he wins the championship. So that tells me a lot about how good Yuki is. And I've got faith, but I also love Yuki.
What about you, Aldas? Would you also go for Yuki?
Yeah,
or?
Absolutely. I feel like in Tsunoda, there rough diamond. Tommo said it, and he's totally right. Like, there is a rough diamond. He has got a little bit unlucky. I do feel like he's being helped a little bit in terms of the fact that there isn't as much pressure from the F2 Red Bull drivers, because there's no one really like, that's up next. Like, he's the guy that's, pressuring Yuki to be in Formula One. So, yeah, I do want a little bit more consistency. He started the season quite well, but now he's had a few poor races. He hasn't scored points in like 5 or 6 or 7 races. So, yeah, I want to see a better bounce back, because just like with Schumacher, as much as I love Yuki, and I do, he's also not a certainty for 2023. So I want both of these drivers to step it up in the second half of the season.
Yeah, and as again, biggest L down in the comments. Is it a driver? Is it a team? Is it a particular moment or what have you? Let us know down in the comments below. It'll be interesting to actually see. You might throw in Miss Hayden's picks.
It's Hayden, the highlight merchant.
Yeah, exactly. So we can show
Hayden's not here. So
going on to now, best race. We've had not gonna lie, we've had some absolute bangers this season. I think for me though, full on British bias, I think it's got to be Silverstone. I said when we did our review on it, excluding the big crash at the beginning, I thought it had all the perfect elements of what we're wanting from racing. Like you had Sainz getting under pressure and like making a few mistakes. You had both Red Bulls. You had both Red Bulls getting a bit of damage. So therefore, we got to see more of the midfield battle sort of coming up, which we normally wouldn't get the opportunity to. You've seen like Perez, storm through. I think he had to box quite early to replace his front wing and came from like 14th or something up to like P3, P4 in the end. Excuse me. But you also then saw the inter-team battle with Ferrari, with like Leclerc trying to get ahead, but then Sainz, trying to having the sort of the confidence off from his previous win.
Don't invent.
Sort of
Stop inventing.
Just and then obviously that massive scrap at the very end. On the final corners. Both Perez and the Ferraris battling. And I just had all the ingredients, and I do realise this just comes off as British bias. It's not that. It's just actually a really good race. And then obviously for the folk who love to see crashes, you had that like massive crash at the beginning, which luckily everyone was all fine about. And which was even still was more confusing because it's literally more of a straight line rather than a corner pile up. But Aldas, let's go to you first. What's your vote for the best race?
You totally nicked it. It was going to be Silverstone. I still think it's the best race. It's the best race of the season. It had everything really. Again, I don't, that first crash, you don't want to see it, but taking that bit out, out the way, it was fantastic. We had a change of lead. We had, amazing battles throughout. Legendary radio moments as well. And I still don't know how Carlos Sainz actually won it, by the way. But again, that's maybe for another video. if I can't choose Silverstone, I'm gonna go actually. I think it was the next race out, Austria, and actually not just the race, but maybe like the entire weekend. I thought the sprint was quite interesting. I thought also the race was quite good. We saw so much amazing battles mid race. I think there was about 5 cars battling for like P7 or P6. I think it was like Sonoda, Norris, K-Mag, Alonso. Amazing to see like cars that close. It's honestly something that I've never seen before. Like that was just incredible. And at the front, we also got a great battle. Leclerc. Again, maybe through strategy not being on his side, he had to overtake Verstappen like 3 times. And I did see a statistic actually that might have been like the first time or like one of the very few times in Formula 1 going back to like the 70s that actually happened for the race win. A leader overtaking someone 3 times. So yeah, it was just I thought it was just a really good weekend, but also a really good race as well. And also that spectacular retirement by Sainz as well, seeing his engine on fire, which it wasn't great to watch, but luckily he was okay, so we can kind of, look at it a bit more lighthearted. But yeah, I thought it was a really good race, actually.
I think it's a really good shout, that, because I think Austria was one of the... It really proved that the brand new cars, like, being able to follow a lot closer, that was one of the true, like, examples of where, like, it's a simple track, but when you got simple corners like that, it means you do get that mix-up, like you said, with the whole battle between, like, the McLarens and, even K-Mag and the Alpines and such. But even then, like, that with Silverstone, like, was the circuit still going to be... Because the circuit's always been good, but is it going to be good with this new era? Absolutely did, and it wasn't just, simple DRS overtakes as well. But Tommo, let's go over to you now. What's your pick for the best race of this season so far?
I mean... Yeah,
bias.
Best race has to be Silverstone, didn't it? It had a bit of everything. You guys, of course, always. You guys, but I want to give an honourable mention.
I was thinking about that. Not gonna lie.
First race of the year. You had a scrap at the front as well. You had Max and Charles scrapping at the front. That move when Charles gets past Max and kind of chops across him. I thought that was textbook, nailed it. And then obviously you had the Red Bulls, like dramatically blowing.
Yeah, the fuel pump going.
They're just breaking down, like mid corner towards the end. And I think just as that was the first race, kind of the year, I just felt like that really set a real nice kind of. It was a great opening race. I think it was you had that proper scrap at the front. You had Bottas got a good result in his new team.
Zhou got debut points as well.
Esteban got in the points. Like I think there was. Zhou got debut points as well, which is what Sonoda did last year.
Yeah.
Just didn't score points like ever again, basically, which is quite funny. But yeah, no, I just thought that was a cracking start to the season. Great battling at the front. The new kind of Ferrari Red Bull versus that storyline was firmly kind of set, and we saw kind of Mercedes a bit off the pace, which kind of shocked everyone as well. Silverstone had everything, but Bahrain is up there as well. My vote goes to Silverstone, but shout out Bahrain.
I think that's the thing. We've just been really spoilt with some really good races this season. And it just goes to show, the new 2022 cars are doing the job. But it's also showing, like some tracks which aren't working as well, but some tracks which we've had for a while are working well. And I think, like, even, like, say, Monaco, this has not been my pick as a great race. Like, although, yes, we had, like, the weather situation there, it was still all rightish race because it was basically us waiting on like who's going to try and get past Fernando Alonso, holding people up, and it was still good there.
Train.
So I think with the Alonso train, yes. But now let's go on to one which is going to be probably a bit more of an open discussion, I think, which is going to be worst race. Obviously, we always haven't had some proper bangers. My pick I'm going to throw into the hat is going to be Miami, because I loved, the whole build up to it, all the marketing. I just any sort of American race we've had so far it's always been great in terms of like the build up and like the theatrics of it. The issue though, I just felt like it got too overhyped, and there was not a lot of overtakes, and the only overtakes we really did get were pretty much DRS ones. The only bit of like big pizzazz we saw was when Lando got taken out by I think it was Gasly who went wide and then tagged him because he didn't see him there.
It was.
But aside from that, can't remember too much else really from it. We did have a fight
for the win though, which I think kind of saves it a little bit. Like I remember Verstappen like overtook Leclerc, which was kind of fun to watch, and at that point we still thought that we had a championship battle. By the way.
Yeah, but that was like a simple DRS overtake. It wasn't like, and I think that's one of the very few overtakes we actually did kind of see, to be honest, because it's it's a weird track. There's not many there's two main straights, but there's not many other overtaking spots.
But Matt, we saw Mick Schumacher bottle it and crash into Seb. I mean, I thought, wouldn't that be like your favourite race?
But yeah, but that's my pick of like the bit of the overhyped or the worst race. I think just because I think I had a lot of promise going into it. That's why I'm cautious about Las Vegas. I'm hoping it's good because I think the environment there and the track could potentially work hand in hand. Where Miami sort of just missed the boat. Literally, they didn't have any water in the harbour there. So again, going back to those old memes. But yeah, Tommo, what would be your pick for the worst race so far?
Thinking about this and Miami, honestly, I think Miami was the one that came to mind for me most now. Obviously, my perspective. I mean, to be fair,
even though you were there, yeah,
just had to put that one in,
weekend. So, but I just had to, I just didn't know. You got to flex. Come on. I just think that, I think that the Lando Gasly incident was, and the safety car that kind of brought out, kind of added to a race that before that point didn't really have too much, and it was all right. I don't think we've had a bad race this year. Like whenever I do my post race streams, I always kind of rank out of 10, and I don't think I've ranked anything lower than a 6, maybe a 5, and even 5 to me is like bang average. So I don't think we've had a bad race. It's just picking the worst of a good bunch, and I think Miami, like you say, I think there were a lot of expectations coming into it. I think they've learned a good amount from now hosting the event and potentially changing up a few things. But, you got that really clumsy kind of section where they've got to kind of slow the cars right down because they're going under bridges.
And I think it was Sainz and Ocon that had like big shunts into those concrete barriers as well, which they weren't exactly happy with.
Yeah, that was sketchy.
Yeah, and they hurt themselves as well. Like they didn't look, but because they were concrete barriers as well. So I think all in all, Miami, it's a mad event. It was the first race there, and I'd just say, I was probably the most kind of, again, my perspective is kind of a bit difficult, but I did still watch the race on a TV, not actually in the race, so in the Grand Prix. So I'm gonna say, what a life I live, and I'm gonna agree with that. Actually, for once,
wasn't that hard, was it? Aldas, what do you think?
I actually, to be fair, I don't disagree with Miami, but I am actually going to go with Baku. Not necessarily because there's anything wrong with like the track. We've had great racing there quite a lot, but the double Ferrari retirement just took the sting completely out of the Grand Prix, in my opinion. Even further down the grid, we had like the two McLarens. There was like team orders; they weren't really fighting. I think Fernando Alonso also was like. I remember he had like crazy straight line speed, so I remember there was a bit of overtaking there. But other than that, yes, Max Verstappen did overtake Sergio Perez, but he always had the speed in the race. And to be honest, I mean, he was coasting by the end of it. So it was one of those races where in the build-up, I thought this is going to be amazing. Leclerc on pole. His quali lap actually on the Saturday, like I know that there's this whole thing about him being a quali merchant that's been going around, and I do kind of get it, but no, his quali lap on the Saturday I thought was special. It was a very good lap. But yeah, the double Ferrari retirement, it just totally took the sting out of the race, and in the end kind of made it a little bit forgettable, to be honest. Max Verstappen won, and obviously fair enough, he did overtake for the win, but up against Sergio Perez, it's not the same as overtaking Leclerc, so yeah, my shout is going to go to Baku, but I'm sure it's going to deliver a banger next year.
Yeah, do you think either Baku or Miami need to have any circuit changes? I think Miami definitely needs to, but do you think Baku needs any? Because we've had this before where Baku is kind of like a faster version of Monaco, just with higher buildings. But do you think they need any sort of changes to the track to make the race a bit more fun to fit these new cars?
Well, because Baku tends to either deliver absolute bangers or damp squibs. And look, I don't want to be too kind of reactive. This is a new generation of car. Everyone's getting on top of the platforms. There's still kind of quite big gaps between the front of the pack and the back of the pack. And I think, again, like you said, Aldas, with the double Ferrari retirement, because they were the only team that could really challenge Red Bull at this race at the front, that did kind of take the sting out of it. So I don't want to be too. I don't think with Baku. I think Baku's fine as it is. I just think as the teams converge, it will improve. Miami-wise, though, I mean, I don't really know. The thing is, they are kind of very restricted as to where they are, that location. I think there's some great, like I think the S's again, like seeing those cars go through the S's and like almost lose the back end. Like there's some cool parts of the track. There's some bits where it just seems a bit overly narrow, like coming out of that kind of hairpin before the second long straight. I don't know. I wouldn't. I
think
say
we need
so,
to give.
personally.
I think we need to give Miami a little bit more
think
time. I totally understand. Actually, in that final sector, a lot of people were negative, obviously, about kind of like the twiddly chicanes, but a racetrack does need to have kind of really tight chicanes to stop the cars, because ultimately the best place to overtake is going to be in a very deep and tight braking zone. So yeah, maybe they can alter that a little bit. I'm not a fan of the concrete barriers there. Again, Ocon and Sainz had really big shunts there that they weren't happy about. But yeah, well, I think we need to give Miami a little bit more time. But yeah, maybe some changes, but we do need to have kind of some kind of, big braking zone to kind of encourage overtaking and dive bombs. But yeah, maybe Miami, I think. But as far as Baku, I think it was just kind of circumstance. It wasn't, it wasn't the track's fault that Ferrari decided to blow up. So yeah, I think Miami more than Baku.
Yeah. Nice one. Well, I think just before we wrap it up there, I just want to get your quick thoughts, guys, because obviously not this weekend, but the weekend after, Formula One comes back, and we're going to go back to Belgium. And there is some talk that Spa might not be returning next season, which I think would be a great shame. But I'm really excited for Spa. I'm so curious to see how these new cars sort of work out there. I just hope it's not rained out again like last year. Just like, yeah, I don't know what you guys think, but like I would really be like disappointed if they weren't able to have Spa again on the calendar, because it's such a great track and we had such great races in there. Obviously they've made a load of changes now at Eau Rouge and Raidillon. They've got a new grandstand there and they've made it a bit wider. But yeah, Aldas, what do you think of it potentially being removed?
At the beginning of the season, I remember we did a video kind of ranking the tracks, and I'm pretty sure I gave Spa a 10, because Spa-Francorchamps is the racetrack of all racetracks. It's not in a fancy location, it doesn't have a fake harbour, it's literally in the middle of the woods, but it's such a great track. It's fast, it's iconic, it's good for overtaking, the drivers love it. But I feel like that commercial value is perhaps what it's missing. So that's why I feel like it's becoming under pressure, which I don't think is right. Sometimes tracks, there are, in my opinion, don't get me wrong, there's some tracks that I think can be removed, even if they're good tracks, but there's heritage tracks, and we have to remember our history. Tracks like Monza, Silverstone, again, Spa, even Monaco. I am a Monaco defender, everyone knows that. But Spa in particular, I feel like... Forget what happened last year. That was just a freak occurrence. Of course that's going to happen at some point. So, don't judge the track on like one race that was cancelled. Although George Russell did get a podium, which I'm buzzing about. But yeah, if it does go, I'm going to be really sad to see it go. And I feel like it will be a massive loss, because not only is it a really good track, but it's also really important to the heritage of Formula One, which I think is also important. Like there is a bit of value in that as well.
Yeah, I think that the sport needs to preserve a degree of this heritage. I understand they want to, expand the sport into different markets, and I don't fundamentally disagree with that. I think the sport has been too European centric for a long time now, but for the whole sports history, I think it should be a more global. We should have more races in South America, more races in Asia. I get that, but as a track like Spa, I think has to. Yeah, like you say, it's part of the sport. It's part of the history of the sport. It's a challenge for the drivers. The driver love it. You'd like to think that Spa can find some kind of way, the management there, to make it more commercially appealing, because it's not short of fans.
It's like, definitely a sellout. I'll tell you, I know that for a fact, because I tried to go.
Make this a more appealing prospects. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, unlucky, mate. What I'm actually more interested though is this whole Spa will be the first race after summer break, and this flexi floor thing, there will be some changes in terms of, I don't know, Mercedes, George has spoken on being optimistic about, because apparently they don't have the flexi floor and it's only Red Bull and Ferrari who've been naughty apparently, whatever, I don't know, we'll see. But I think that's going to be really interesting to see, actually, especially at a track like Spa, which I think, is it the best track for racing in F1? I think it's good. It's not the best. It's definitely not the worst. It's there. I'm buzzing to see it back.
I'm buzzing for the Thursday, the press conferences after everything that's been going on. Like, I am buzzing for that.
I was gonna say because we're in this
true.
weird lull period
my
at the
God.
moment where we've had
Oh
all
my
the
God.
Oscar Piastri McLaren
my
stuff happen. It's not been fully resolved yet, but then nothing's happened before the race. So like I feel like something's gonna happen either this week or the beginning of next week.
Yeah.
Which we'll probably cover on the podcast. That like something's gonna get announced. Something's gonna happen because otherwise then
got
all
to give
$21
journos.
million, yes or no?
Surely.
Well, technically it's 18. That's US. That's Australian dollars. Everyone's counting for. But yeah,
Briefcase.
Daniel comes in with like a big gold chain, like full diamond pendant with like DR3 on it. That would certainly say one. Actually, before we finish, one other one I wanted to quickly mention and is best overtake of the season, because we've had some quality overtakes. I did some. I'll let you guys think. I've got some mention now. Obviously, Hamilton Silverstone was mad. The opportunistic move up the inside of Leclerc Perez while they're battling, positioning his car perfectly. The crofty commentary added to it as well. You had good moves. There's a Leclerc on Russell at Hungary, which I thought was phenomenal around the outside. There's a perspective from the fans, which I just think the way Leclerc gets that car stopped so perfectly and just moves ahead of Russell, unreal. And then also Verstappen on Leclerc at Imola around the outside. He broke at the absolute perfect time. If he'd have carried any more speed, he'd have got off. If he'd have carried any less speed, he wouldn't have given Charles the room. Them two, Leclerc, Verstappen, on Russell and Leclerc respectively, they were like perfect textmark overtakes.
Yeah, I think.
But that Hamilton one,
I think for me, I do agree it's a great moment, and the commentary there was perfect. The only thing for me on that one is it's more Perez pushing.
I think Tom is getting swept up in the moment.
It's more that
like the actual overtake. He just drove.
Yeah,
it was great.
Yeah, because basically.
Of course.
Yeah, but it was opportunistic.
But also, there was only one other car he was passing that was technically on track, because the other one was also off track, because they were both pushing each other off. But like, as again, I do think it's a great moment. But if you disagree with that one, in that case, then my best is Daniel Ricciardo at Hungary doing a double pass around the left-hander. So because that's pretty much the exact same.
It was yeah, I mean, not quite as good as the moment a little bit later on in the race where he binned it into Stroll. But
that was very good.
No, to be fair, joking aside, that was a great. That was a great.
That was because of the strategy of McLaren putting him on the wrong tyre. Strategy, here come the excuses.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Drives the car,
those hard tyres.
He can't take autopilot. He can't take autopilot off.
About those hard tyres. But no, that was actually joking aside, that was a great move by Ricciardo. So opportunistic, while those who were messing around, he just slips by. Yeah. And I also loved the radio afterwards. Like that was almost like 2018 Ricciardo vibes. I don't know what it was. It kind of got the emotion running. But for me, the overtake king has been Leclerc. I mean, unbelievable. The funny part is about his overtaking is that it's been more out of necessity. The fact that every single time, in terms of strategy, he's always being pulled back, which I think is more down to Ferrari. So he's had to make those overtakes. But whether it's the Silverstone one round the outside of Cops around Hamilton, the controversial, manner of it because of what happened in 2021 as well. But for me, it was the dive bomb on Max Verstappen in Austria. I think the final one. And I only realized when I watched the onboard, oh my God, was it a late one? And he was on such a compromised line as well. So easy to lock it and, to put both of them out of the race. But his judgment on the brakes and his commitment has just been absolutely amazing to watch. So, yeah, for me, that's probably the one. That lunge is just... I couldn't believe the onboard when I saw it. So for me, that's been the overtake of the season so far.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. But yeah, let us know in the comments as well what your best overtake of the season is. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Make sure to rate us 5 stars on Spotify. Thanks to everyone who's done that already so far. Make sure to like and make sure to comment down below all your different picks and stuff. But yeah, until then, we'll see you next week. And it's goodbye from us.
Bye.
See ya.